You pathetic old woman, you've been playing us all along. All those years pretending to be some poor, helpless widow while you were sitting on millions? I never pretended to be helpless, Sophia. I simply never felt the need to prove my worth with price tags and Instagram posts, unlike someone who built her entire life on counterfeit watches and lies. Sophia, tell me it's not true. Tell me our whole marriage wasn't just you hunting for money you thought my mother was too senile to protect. Mother, can't you do something about this oil smell? Oliver's shirts reek of it. Sophia, this isn't just oil. Enough. I've really reached my limit. How long are you going to hold on to this decrepit shop? In a small alley on the outskirts of London, sharp voices echoed inside a clock repair shop with a faded sign reading, "Time and Fix." Sophia, with a designer handbag draped over her arm, wrinkled her nose as she surveyed the interior. The workbench that looked well over 50 years old, the walls packed with ancient clocks, and in the midst of it all, her mother-in-law Eleanor quietly examining a grandfather clock. To Sophia's eyes, it all seemed nothing more than anachronistic. Eleanor set down her magnifying glass and slowly looked at her daughter-in-law. Wrinkled hands, work clothes stained with oil, neatly tied white hair. Her appearance was nothing more or less than that of an ordinary neighborhood clock repairer. But her eyes alone were as sharp as lenses honed by the years. Sophia clicked her tongue as she kicked at the component boxes piled in the corner of the shop with her toe. Not a pretty cafe or gallery worth posting on Instagram. She couldn't understand why her mother-in-law would spend her remaining years in such a shabby place. What was even more unbearable was the peculiar pride her husband Oliver had for this shop and his mother. Eleanor quietly began to speak as she organized the clock parts on her workbench. Her voice was low and calm, but it carried the precision she had learned from decades of handling watch mechanisms. However, Sophia didn't listen to the end and turned away. She already had a plan. She thought she was the only one who knew the value of the land where this old shop stood. After her daughter-in-law left, the shop became quiet again. Only the ticking of the wall clocks filled the space. Eleanor wound the grandfather clock's spring while gazing out the window. She recalled the day 50 years ago when she had opened this shop with her husband. Then as now, she was unchanged, a person who handled time. The world just didn't know how deep a secret she hid within time. Deep in the workbench drawer lay envelopes neatly arranged with the logos of Swiss luxury watch brands embossed on them. Patent certificates, letters of appreciation, royalty statements. But Eleanor had rarely taken them out. To her, the real treasure was the moment of bringing a broken clock back to life before her eyes. Oliver's birthday party was an event Sophia had carefully prepared. A private room at an upscale restaurant overlooking the Thames, crystal glasses filled with champagne, and guests in glamorous dresses. Everything was perfect. A perfect stage that Sophia had orchestrated to post on her Instagram story. Eleanor sat quietly in a corner of the party venue. She wore her usual modest blouse and cardigan. Among the glamorous people around her, she seemed like a figure from a black and white photograph, barely noticeable. Oliver approached his mother and asked cautiously, "Was she all right? Was she uncomfortable?" Eleanor gently held her son's hand and smiled. "She was fine," she said. "If he was happy, that was enough." Cake cutting time approached. Sophia expertly played host, drawing the guests' attention. Her voice was bright and cheerful, but her gaze toward Eleanor was cold. As they cut the cake, Sophia whispered in Oliver's ear, "There would be an important announcement shortly." Sophia, holding a champagne glass, stepped onto the platform. She began with words praising Oliver's success. A wonderful husband, a brilliant architect, a loving father. The guests applauded. Then Sophia continued. It was time for the family to make decisions together for a new beginning. They needed to clear out old things and move toward the future. Eleanor knew exactly where her daughter-in-law's words were heading. Having read the minute movements of clock components for decades, Sophia's calculated gestures and expressions were all too clear to her. But she didn't move. A clockmaker knows how to be patient. How to wait until all the parts find their place. Sophia's voice grew louder. She said that Oliver's mother had worked hard all her life and it was time for her to rest comfortably. That old clock repair shop was too much of a burden for her mother. And it would be better to settle it and have her spend her remaining years in a care facility. And she announced that she would receive investment to open a vegan yoga studio in its place. The party venue buzzed. Some guests nodded, while others looked uncomfortable. Oliver glanced back and forth between his wife and mother with a bewildered expression. He had heard nothing about this announcement. Sophia squeezed her husband's hand and smiled. It was the best choice for their family, she said, and mother would understand. Eleanor slowly rose from her seat. All eyes focused on her. She looked straight at her daughter-in-law and spoke quietly but firmly. That shop held memories of her husband, she said, and it was her life itself. She couldn't yield it to anyone. The air in the party venue froze. The smile disappeared from Sophia's face. Her eyes sharpened. She stepped closer and spoke in a low voice. Then she should forget about ever seeing her granddaughter Lily again. A stubborn old woman would only poison a child's upbringing. Eleanor's expression hardened slightly. Oliver looked at his wife with disbelief, but Sophia had already turned away. A week after the party, Eleanor's shop opened as usual. But a small crack had formed in her heart. Not being able to see her granddaughter Lily. Not being able to watch that child grow up. That alone was hard to bear. But Eleanor was a clockmaker. Like fixing a broken part, she had to diagnose this situation accurately and repair it. She called an old friend. Mr. Sterling, a lawyer who had managed her assets for over 40 years and one of the few people who knew her true identity. Sterling's voice over the phone was still calm. He answered quietly as if he had already anticipated the situation. "Let's meet tomorrow," he said. The next afternoon, Sterling visited the shop with a thick briefcase. He accepted the tea Eleanor offered and gazed out the window. It was a view he had been watching since the shop first opened 50 years ago. He opened his briefcase and said, it was time to stop hiding and show who she was. They were mistaking her humility for incompetence. The stack of documents Sterling pulled out was thicker than expected. Sophia's credit card usage records, loan records, and even identity verification results of the people she called investors. Eleanor slowly flipped through the documents, frowning. Sophia had incurred debts exceeding £200,000 without Oliver's knowledge. Designer shopping, fine dining restaurants, cosmetic procedures. This was the truth hidden behind the plausible title of lifestyle curator. More serious were the next documents. The investors Sophia had contacted were actually individuals with multiple fraud charges in real estate. Their method was simple. Buy valuable land at bargain prices and resell it under redevelopment pretexts to pocket the difference. Sophia had unknowingly become their bait. Eleanor closed the documents and let out a long sigh. Sterling placed his hand on her shoulder. There was no need to endure anymore, he said, they could respond legally. But Eleanor shook her head. Court battles take a long time. She was worried about the wounds Oliver would receive in the meantime. What she needed was a quick and precise strike. A few days later, the expected happened. Oliver came to the shop. His face was pale, and dark circles hung heavily under his eyes. He sat before his mother and spoke in a trembling voice. Sophia had decided to cut off the living expense support. It seemed better for mother to go to a nursing home. Eleanor held her son's hand. She could feel how cold it was. Oliver confessed. In truth, he was struggling to handle Sophia's spending. Though he had been promoted at work, the debt wasn't decreasing. But because he loved his wife and for the sake of their daughter Lily, he was enduring. Eleanor listened to her son to the end. Then she quietly asked, what did he really want? Happiness, or appearances? That night, Eleanor sat at her workbench, fingering an old pocket watch. A watch her husband had given her as a gift. When wound, it still worked perfectly. Time doesn't lie. Truth is always revealed eventually. She called Sterling again. "Prepare yourself," she said. The curtain was about to rise. Sophia's next move was more malicious. At a gathering with Oliver's work colleagues, she casually mentioned her mother-in-law's memory had been failing lately. She repeated the same things, and had even left the gas burner on and forgotten about it. All lies, but the rumors spread quickly. Neighbors also began to whisper one by one. Eleanor felt the gazes of people passing by the shop change. Pitying looks, or uncomfortable avoidance. Even regular customers who had known her for over 40 years changed to a cautious attitude. "Were you all right? Did you need help?" Eleanor only smiled. A clockmaker's hands were still precise, and her mind was clearer than anyone's. Sophia went one step further. She made an appointment with a psychiatrist. Her plan was to get Eleanor diagnosed with dementia. With a legal declaration of incompetence, the family could take over property management rights. Sophia had already retained a lawyer. Of course, she had charged those lawyer fees to a card without Oliver's knowledge. Sterling reported Sophia's movements to Eleanor in real time. He was furious, but Eleanor was rather calm. She knew that the more aggressive the enemy, the more mistakes they made. Clock repair was the same. If you rush to fix it, the parts get damaged instead. Slowly, precisely, one step at a time. Oliver grew increasingly exhausted. His wife pressured him to put his mother in a nursing home, and his mother said nothing. He began making mistakes at work and received warnings from his supervisor. Every night he drank and agonized over what to do. He loved his wife, but he couldn't abandon his mother. Eleanor's heart ached watching her sons suffering. But she knew that intervening now would only complicate the situation. Oliver had to face the truth himself. Only then could he truly be free. Eleanor thought as she organized the clock parts. The time for all the gears to find their place was approaching. Then one day, Sophia made a critical mistake. She posted a photo of a newly purchased luxury watch on social media. Along with a post bragging it was a limited edition. But to Eleanor's eye, it was clear at a glance that it wasn't genuine. The angle of the case, the print quality of the dial, and above all, the shape of the crown were different. Eleanor sent the photo to Sterling. Sterling immediately requested authenticity verification from the brand's headquarters. The answer was clear: counterfeit. That watch Sophia claimed cost 500,000 won was actually a knockoff that could be bought for 50,000 won at Hong Kong's copy market. Her glamorous lifestyle was a mirage built on lies. Sterling investigated deeper. Sophia's educational background was also suspicious. The degree she claimed from a prestigious university, the study abroad experience she said she had. When verified one by one, they were all exaggerated or fabricated. Sophia was an expert at packaging appearances, but the substance was empty. Eleanor now held all the puzzle pieces in her hands. Sophia's lies, mountain of debt, connections with fraudsters. And above all, the plan to destroy the family while manipulating Oliver. But Eleanor didn't rush. The finest watch is completed at perfect timing. And that timing was approaching. Oliver's promotion celebration party. The second stage Sophia had carefully prepared. This time, it was a larger and more glamorous venue. A penthouse lounge overlooking the Thames at a glance. Chandeliers gleaming, violin melodies flowing, and famous figures from London's social circles invited. Sophia had a new dress tailored for this day and spent millions of won on hair and makeup alone. Eleanor was not invited. Sophia told Oliver. Mother's condition wasn't good lately, so let her rest comfortably. Such a noisy place would be too much for an elderly person. Oliver hesitated but ultimately followed his wife's words. He called his mother to ask for understanding. Eleanor said it was fine, to have a good time. The party began grandly. Guests held champagne and congratulated Oliver. He shook hands with a forced smile. But a corner of his heart felt heavy. A party without his mother felt somehow empty. Sophia patted her husband's shoulder and whispered. There would be an important announcement today, for their family's future. Time passed and the main event arrived. Sophia took the stage and grabbed the microphone. Her voice seemed full of emotion, but it was a perfectly rehearsed performance. She praised Oliver's success with glistening tears. Then she changed the subject. To talk about her beloved mother-in-law. Sophia said, her mother-in-law's health had deteriorated significantly recently, her memory was declining and judgment clouding. She was obsessed with the old shop to the point of not eating or sleeping properly. So after family discussions, they had decided to move Mother to a professional care facility. Guests nodded with sympathetic expressions. But Sophia's next words were more shocking. She pulled out a document envelope and said, to safely manage her mother-in-law's assets, she had taken legal guardianship procedures and wanted to formalize it at this occasion. And she declared that the old clock repair shop property would be sold to settle family debts and start a new business. Oliver froze. He had heard nothing of such plans. There had been no family meeting, no consent from his mother. He tried to stand, but Sophia gripped his hand tightly. Her nails dug into the back of his hand. A silent warning to stay seated. Just then, the party venue door opened. All eyes turned that way. Eleanor was entering, but not in her usual modest attire. She wore the finest custom-tailored suit. An elegant dark navy jacket and skirt, a pearl necklace, and on her wrist shone a vintage luxury watch, one of only 3 in existence in the world. Behind her, Mr. Sterling followed carrying a briefcase. The party venue held its breath. Eleanor walked slowly but firmly toward the stage. Her gaze was that of a craftsman who had handled watch mechanisms for decades. Cold, precise, unwavering. The color drained from Sophia's face. Eleanor opened her mouth. It was time to begin the real story. Eleanor stood before the stage. Her presence overwhelmed the entire party venue. Sophia tried to hide her flustered state with a forced laugh. But her hands were trembling. Eleanor gently yet firmly grasped her daughter-in-law's wrist. And pointed to the watch she was wearing. Eleanor's voice rang through the party venue. Quiet but clear. She announced to everyone that the limited edition watch Sophia had been bragging about was fake. If you ask how she knew, it was because the person who designed that model's original movement was herself. The party venue began to stir. Guests looked at each other and whispered. Sophia yanked her wrist away and shouted. What nonsense was this? Did it make sense that a neighborhood clock shop owner had designed a luxury watch? Her voice was sharp but laced with trembling. Eleanor remained unfazed. She nodded toward Sterling. It was time to show the evidence. Sterling opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick file. He began to explain calmly before the guests who Eleanor was, what she had done for the past 50 years. Letters of appreciation from Swiss headquarters, technical consulting contracts with world-renowned watch brands, and the list of patents she held. The documents were endless. Gasps erupted among the guests. Someone pulled out their phone and began searching Eleanor's name. In the watch industry, her name was legendary. The craftsman who developed core technology for master grand complications. Records showed that the world's top watch experts had come to learn from her. Oliver looked at his mother with disbelief. Sterling continued unfolding documents. Eleanor's asset statement. The royalties from her patents alone amounted to hundreds of millions of won annually. The actual appraised value of that clock repair shop building and land that had been considered decrepit exceeded £5 million. It was a place that watch enthusiasts worldwide regarded as a holy land. The very place Sophia had tried to sell off cheaply. Sophia's face turned pale. She stepped back, but Eleanor didn't let her go. Now it was Sophia's turn. Eleanor spoke calmly. About the debts her daughter-in-law had hidden, the falsified educational background, and the plan to betray the family by joining hands with fraudsters. Everything was laid bare. Sterling disclosed Sophia's credit card statements. Debts exceeding £200,000. Designer bags, fine dining restaurants, plastic surgery clinics. This was the truth behind everything she had boasted about as a lifestyle curator. And the identities of the investors she had contacted. Convicted criminals with multiple real estate fraud charges. Sophia had been nothing more than their puppet. Oliver covered his face with both hands. He hadn't known that his wife had built up lies to this extent. How much he had been deceived. He asked in a trembling voice. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why did you hide it like this?" Eleanor looked at her son. Her eyes held both deep sadness and love simultaneously. Eleanor answered quietly. She wanted to raise her son to be strong. She wanted him to learn to stand on his own strength, not money. But she hadn't known that her silence would cause her son pain and turn her daughter-in-law into a monster. Her voice was tinged with regret. Oliver approached his mother and embraced her. His shoulders shook. Sophia screamed. It was all lies, it was all fabricated, an act orchestrated by an old woman and a lawyer. But no one believed her words. Guests had already verified Eleanor's credentials on their phones. A living legend of the watch industry. Her existence was an undeniable fact. Sophia tried to escape the party venue, but the exit was already blocked. Sophia was cornered. Her glamorous dress now looked shabby. The guests' gazes changed from sympathy to contempt. Someone turned on their phone camera. The social media that Sophia had loved so much now became a tool to judge her. She approached Oliver tearfully, but Oliver turned his head away. Eleanor asked Sophia a final question. Did she truly love the family, or had she only been after Oliver's background and wealth from the beginning? Sophia couldn't answer. Her silence was the answer. Oliver clenched his fists. More than anger, it was betrayal that crushed him. The realization that 5 years of marriage had been a lie. Sterling pulled out additional documents. Evidence that Sophia had approached Oliver deliberately even before marriage. She had investigated Oliver's family background through social media and arranged their meeting under the guise of coincidence. The first date location, common interests all calculated. The last hope faded from Oliver's face. Sophia collapsed to the floor. She sobbed and began making excuses. She had no choice. Having grown up poor, she had only yearned for a glamorous life. There had been love too. But her tears didn't seem genuine. Guests shook their heads and began leaving one by one. The party was completely ruined. Eleanor looked down at Sophia. Her gaze held not anger but disappointment. If Sophia had treated the family with even a bit of sincerity, if she had lived even slightly honestly, this wouldn't have happened. But she had obsessed only over appearances and was now paying the price. Oliver approached Sophia. He knelt to meet her eye level. His voice was cold and firm. Leave the house tomorrow. He would send divorce papers through a lawyer. He would take custody of their daughter Lily. Sophia tried to protest, but Oliver wouldn't listen anymore. He stood and returned to his mother. Eleanor embraced her son's shoulders. Oliver burst into tears in his mother's arms for the first time. He apologized repeatedly, sorry for not seeing his mother properly, for believing only his wife's words and doubting his mother. Eleanor stroked her son's head and whispered that it was all right now. The party venue was almost empty. All that remained were scattered champagne glasses, collapsed cake, and Sophia sitting on the floor. Sterling quietly organized the documents. Eleanor gazed out the window. Moonlight flowed over the Thames. It had been a long night, but dawn was approaching. Sophia approached Eleanor one last time. She begged for forgiveness. But Eleanor shook her head. Forgiveness is only given to genuine repentance. Sophia still hadn't truly realized her wrongs. Sophia had nothing more to say. She left the party venue. No one stopped her. A week after the party, Oliver took leave from work. He spent time at his mother's clock repair shop. Memories of playing here as a child came back. Days watching his father repair clocks, his mother's careful handling of tiny parts. He hadn't known then how precious those hands were. Eleanor began teaching her son clock repair. Starting with simple spring winding, then how to disassemble parts, how to oil them. Oliver was clumsy but earnest. He began to understand his mother's world for the first time. It sometimes took days to repair a single clock, but in the process, he learned patience and concentration. One evening, Oliver asked his mother, why had she lived so frugally? Why had she insisted on the old shop when she had sufficient wealth? Eleanor pointed to an old clock on the workbench and answered, true value accumulates in time, not on price tags. Truth is more beautiful than glamour. Oliver nodded. His daughter Lily came to the repair shop. It was her first time seeing grandmother since Sophia had left home. The child was shy at first, but her eyes sparkled when Eleanor handed her a small pocket watch. Eleanor let her granddaughter listen to the watch's sound and told her a story. Time is fair to everyone, how you use it is what matters. Lily sat on her grandmother's lap and listened to the clock's ticking. Sterling began the work of settling Sophia's debts. Eleanor made a decision. She would pay off those debts on her behalf, but with two conditions. First, Sophia would work diligently to repay that money. Second, she would never appear before Oliver and Lily again. It seemed harsh, but it was the best for everyone. Sophia accepted the conditions. She had no choice. To avoid legal proceedings and bankruptcy, she had to follow Eleanor's proposal. Sterling wrote a recommendation letter so Sophia could find employment. Not glamorous work, but honest work. Whether Sophia could truly change was up to her. Time would prove it. Oliver proceeded with divorce proceedings. The process wasn't smooth, but with his mother and Sterling's help, he secured custody of Lily. He returned to work, this time with a firmer heart. The concentration and patience he had learned from his mother began to reflect in his architectural projects. Eleanor gradually transformed the repair shop. While maintaining the old exterior, she created an educational space inside for young clockmakers. Young people from around the world who wanted to learn clockmaking came to visit. Eleanor taught them not only technique but also philosophy. What true craftsmanship meant. One day, Oliver discovered a clock his mother had repaired. It was the watch his father had worn when alive. Eleanor had kept it for 50 years, winding it every day. Oliver held the watch to his ear and heard the ticking. Within that sound was his father's breath, his mother's love, and the truth proven by time. 6 months had passed. Time and fix still stood in its place, but it had become a space with different meaning. A small nameplate was added below the sign. Eleanor's Horology Academy. It had become a place visited by aspiring young clockmakers from around the world. Reservations were fully booked a year in advance. Eleanor operated small classes every Wednesday and Saturday. She only accepted 5 students or fewer at a time. Clock repair wasn't mass production but the transmission of craftsmanship. Students watched her every hand movement with reverence. The wisdom of a life lived for over 70 years was contained in those hands. Oliver brought his daughter Lily to the repair shop every weekend. Lily had now become grandmother's little assistant. Organizing parts, handing over tools, sometimes even touching small clocks herself. Eleanor taught her granddaughter carefully. Clocks are tools for measuring time, but they're also teachers of patience and devotion. One day, the CEO of a famous Swiss watch brand personally visited the repair shop. He requested Eleanor participate in a new complication development project. Eleanor politely declined. Teaching the younger generation was more important now. Passing her knowledge to future generations was her final mission. The CEO firmly grasped her hand and expressed his respect. Sterling remained Eleanor's reliable supporter. He established a legal structure for operating the academy and created a scholarship system, so talented young people in difficult circumstances could learn for free. Part of Eleanor's royalty income went into that fund. Eleanor's philosophy was that money has value when it flows like water. Oliver was assigned an important project at work: historical building restoration. He applied what he had learned from his mother. Not just glamorously decorating appearances, but restoration that respected the building's essence and history. His approach began receiving attention in the industry. His mother's teachings were making him a better architect. Lily gave a presentation at school on the theme, My Hero. The hero she chose was her grandmother. Lily talked about how grandmother had focused on one thing all her life, how she became a world-class master while living humbly. The teacher and friends were moved. Eleanor smiled quietly watching her granddaughter's presentation video. One spring day, a young woman came to the repair shop. She introduced herself in a trembling voice. It was Sophia, but her former glamorous appearance was nowhere to be seen. Modest clothing, a face without makeup, and sincere eyes. She told Eleanor. She had worked diligently for the past 6 months, was gradually paying off debts, and above all, had realized how foolish she had been. Eleanor invited Sophia inside the shop. The two sat facing each other after a long time. Sophia apologized tearfully. Sincerely. Eleanor held her hand. Forgiveness wasn't easy, but she acknowledged the effort to change. However, meeting Oliver and Lily again would need more time. Sophia nodded. She was ready to wait. 2 years had passed. Time and Fix had now become a London landmark. A place visited not only by watch enthusiasts but also general tourists. But Eleanor still refused commercialization. This was a space for learning, not an exhibition hall. She still opened the shop door every morning and repaired broken clocks. Students who had gone through Eleanor Academy were now active around the world. They hadn't forgotten their teacher's lessons. That mindset is more important than technique, that truth is more beautiful than glamour. They practiced Eleanor's philosophy in their respective positions. Her legacy was already being passed to the next generation. Oliver had now become a director at his company. But he remained humble. He never forgot what he had learned from his mother. He always emphasized craftsmanship in his projects. Things that last and are truthful rather than fast and flashy. His buildings shone brighter as time passed. Just like Eleanor's clocks. Lily was now 10 years old. Influenced by her grandmother, she had developed a deep interest in clocks. Not just the mechanical fascination, but she had grown into a child who thought about the meaning of time. She learned to cherish every moment and judge people by their essence, not appearances. Eleanor felt proud watching her granddaughter grow. Sophia was quietly rebuilding her life. She worked at a small cafe, diligently paying off her debts. She rarely used social media and didn't care about appearances. Instead, she learned to communicate sincerely with people. She couldn't meet Oliver and Lily yet, but she lived with hope that day would come. True change would be proven by time. One autumn day, Eleanor completed a special clock. A grand complication she had been creating bit by bit for 50 years. A masterpiece with perfectly functioning moon phases, perpetual calendar, and minute repeater. But she didn't sell it. Instead, she gifted it to Oliver. "This is what your father and I started together and I completed over my lifetime," she said. "Pass it to Lily someday." Oliver received the watch and shed tears. His mother's entire life was contained within it. Love, patience, dedication, and truth. He held the watch to his ear and heard the ticking. The sound was like his mother's heartbeat. Regular, unwavering, as if it would be eternal. Eleanor gazed out the window. Leaves were falling. Seasons turn, time flows, people change. But truth remains. She had lived her life repairing clocks, but in truth, she had been healing people through time. That was her real mission. In one corner of the repair shop hung an old photograph. A photo of young Eleanor and her husband taken in front of the shop. Both were smiling. Eleanor looked at that photo and whispered, "You were right, dear. You said true jewels are in the oldest boxes." Our lives proved that. The sun was setting. Eleanor closed the shop door and wound the last clock's spring. Tomorrow, the day after, she would handle time here. That was her happiness. A life not glamorous but truthful, not wealthy but abundant. A valuable life proven by time. All the clocks on the wall simultaneously announced 6 o'clock. The chimes rang out harmoniously. Eleanor smiled. Her life too, like these clocks, had flowed with precise and beautiful rhythm. And that rhythm would continue to the next generation, and the next. Forever. Time never lies. True value isn't found in price tags or social media likes. It's built through years of dedication, honesty, and love. Eleanor proved that the most precious treasures are often hidden in the most humble places, waiting for those wise enough to see beyond appearances. Remember, the worth of a person isn't measured by what they own, but by what they give and who they become. If this story touched your heart, please hit the like button and subscribe for more inspiring tales. Your support helps us bring you stories that matter. Thank you for watching, and remember, let time reveal your true value.